I discovered 3 terrifying Craigslist horror stories that will haunt your dreams forever. I never should have opened that door. But curiosity gets the best of you, doesn't it? That chilling moment when a simple click feels like a descent into something dark. I was scrolling through Craigslist, just looking for an old chair to refinish a little project to keep my hands busy. Instead, I stumbled upon an ad that sent a shiver down my spine: free to a good home, cherished family heirloom. But it comes with a warning. What kind of warning? My heart raced. The picture attached showed a hauntingly beautiful porcelain doll, its glassy eyes staring straight through the screen. I felt an icy finger trace down my spine as I read on. The owner claimed the doll had been in their family for generations but brought with it a curse. They said strange things started happening since the doll arrived. Whispers at night, cold spots in the house, and the true kicker: shadows moving when no one was there. Sounds innocuous enough, until you're lying in bed at 2 a.m., hearing soft giggles that make your blood run cold. I could practically hear the echoes of fear through their words. Each detail was more bizarre than the last. They described how one evening, the doll had even moved from its place unassisted. I stared at the screen, half skeptical, half terrified. What if it were true? What if something sinister was right around the corner? I felt the hairs on my arms stand on end, but the urge to know more kept pulling me in. The second story featured an ad for an old, rusty bicycle. Nothing significant, right? But oh, the owner claimed it was cursed, having belonged to a child who mysteriously vanished decades ago. I imagined riding that bike, the wind cutting through my hair, only to feel the unsettling weight of something watching me. Or worse, the very spirit of that lost child gripping the handlebars. And then there was the last one. A simple couch posted with a ridiculous price. But it wasn't the price that caught my attention, it was the fact that the seller warned it had been involved in a gruesome crime scene. I could practically smell the dampness that clung to the upholstery, the horror lingering in the air. The imagery of blood seeping into the fabric surged in my mind, pooling in dark corners and whispering tales of trauma. Each story dripped with dread, clawing at my curiosity, dragging me deeper into that chilling underworld of human experiences. I felt the walls of my living room close in, shadows loomed like prison guards. My heart echoed loudly in my ears, drowning out every rational thought. And then, as I sat there spellbound, a noise broke the silence. A soft creak from the hallway. My stomach dropped. I turned slowly, adrenaline surging. The shadows danced grotesquely. Were they playing tricks on me? Just my imagination. I strained to listen, muscles taut, breath held. What was that? A whisper, a child's giggle filtered through the darkness. My body froze. I need to get out of here. But my feet felt rooted, a deer caught in headlights. Just as I steeled myself to run, I caught a glimpse of something moving at the edge of my vision. Something or someone. My heart raced. A cold sweat broke out across my forehead. I never should have opened that door. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The giggle echoed in the hallway, a sound so innocent and yet dripping with malice. My blood ran cold as I turned, as though my body was trying to rebel against my will to flee. I swayed, slightly off balance, my senses battling against the numbing horror. I blinked, trying to clear my vision, but the shadows merely thickened. It was as though they were alive, breathing, infecting the very air around me, and then I saw it, that a shape, no, a silhouette darted quickly beyond the threshold, too swift to comprehend, too articulate to be part of my imagination. My heart raced faster, pounding hard against my ribs, a relentless drumbeat urging me to run. But curiosity, cruel and beckoning, gripped me tightly. My feet moved involuntarily, tracing the path inward, following that echoing giggle, who was tugging me just a little closer. That I moved cautiously, step by step, the wooden floorboards groaning under my weight as though they too were protesting my approach. As I entered the dimly lit hallway, the air grew thick with an unnatural chill, wrapping around my throat like icy fingers. I squinted through the shadows, desperately seeking clarity in the murkiness, hoping for a clear view that could offer some sort of comfort. Another laugh, faint yet unmistakably there, floated back to me. Each note gripping tighter around my heart, nodding with fear and fascination. Was it truly the innocent laugh of a child, or something darker masquerading behind its veneer? I pressed on, my breath escaping me in shallow puffs, dragging in the chilling atmosphere around me. The corner of the hall opened up into a small room, its door ajar. Hesitation washed over me, potent and suffocating. The dull gray walls felt like they were leaning in, confining me, whispering secrets I dared not learn. A fleeting shadow flitted across the wall, too quick to decipher. The air vibrated with a low, mournful hum, the sensation of being watched prickling my skin. Rounding the corner, I steeled myself and pushed the door slowly, painfully aware of the creak that echoed like a gunshot. The dim light obscured much of the room, but I made out small, delicate shapes clinging to the edges of the space. My breath hitched when my eyes landed on the porcelain doll displayed prominently on a dusty shelf. Staring, watching, waiting, that I felt as though those glassy eyes cut straight to my core, penetrating my very essence. The last remnants of rationale slipped from my mind, leaving only raw trepidation. As if compelled, I took a tentative step closer, unable to tear my gaze from that doll. Was this the source of the giggles? A relic of the family whose warning I'd read? And then a sudden chill swept through the room. It was electric, alive, a palpable presence that made my skin ripple with unease. I could hear it giggle again, sweet yet tainted. But deeper still, something else lurked beneath that childlike laughter, something sad, malevolent, desperate. As if treading into the abyss, I reached out to touch the doll. Snap! A loud crack rang out, shattering the silence. I jerked my hand back in shock. The doll's head had turned, its mouth curling into a smile that didn't belong to this world. The air thickened, and as I backed away, the shadows around me took form, swirling, rising. Sister, the voice whispered, a tone far too close, insidious and filled with longing. A chilling breeze teased my hair. I turned to flee, adrenaline surging through me, but the door slammed shut. I was trapped. The giggles escalated, the darkness swollen and pulsing around me, colors bleeding into one another. I felt breath on the back of my neck, cold and stale. I was not alone. Panic crystallized in my chest, and in the madness of the moment, I screamed. But the laughter echoed back, ringing louder, urging me onward, closer to the source of its twisted delight. A child's laughter, a sinister invitation. And then came the click of a lighter being struck, illuminating the darkness, a flickering flame spilling light onto the doll's face, revealing twisted features and a soul that screamed for release. With each flicker, the shadows danced frantically. Just before the flame extinguished, I glimpsed another face behind the doll, a face etched with agony, silently screaming for help. The lighter's flame sputtered before plunging me into darkness. And suddenly, a pair of small hands reached for me from the void. The last sound I heard was the bone-chilling whisper, "Play with us forever." The hand wrapped around my wrist, pulling me back, and the darkness enveloped me completely. The sensation of falling, of being yanked from one realm and thrust into another, consumed me. I choked on the heavy darkness, the air thick like tar, stinging my lungs. My heart thundered in my chest, wild and frantic, as I struggled against the unseen force dragging me deeper into the abyss. The grip on my wrist tightened like iron, and I felt cold, clammy fingers slip around my throat, squeezing, choking off my breath as I was pulled into a frigid embrace. Another giggle erupted, this one close enough that I could almost feel the warmth of a small mouth against my ear, yet the breath that ghosted over me was ice. "Sister, come play," it beckoned once more, sweet yet laced with malice. I could hardly comprehend what was happening, my surroundings shifted, transformed into a twisted realm, one that was undeniably otherworldly, yet rooted in the memory of this terrible place that I gasped and flailed, fighting against the grip around my neck, but my vision grew murky, the edges blurring into nothingness. Just as I thought I would succumb to the darkness, a violent pull wrenched me back, and the scene around me flipped as though a projector had been jammed. I landed not on the floor of that shadowed room, but onto a grass-laden landscape beneath a bruised sky. The world I found myself in was surreal, a vibrantly colorful daydream painted over a sinister undercurrent. Trees swayed gently, their trunks warped and gnarled, but the flowers around them bloomed lush and inviting, vibrant colors beckoning despite the sense of unease curling in my gut. A twisted playground stood stagnant in the center, rusted swings creaking on wonderful tiny chains, inviting but foreboding, and that giglight was everywhere now, echoing from all directions. I turned, searching for its source, nearly falling over in my haste, when I caught sight of a small figure perched on the edge of the sandbox. Clad in an ethereal white gown, hair falling in golden waves, she sat with her back to me. The sunlight glinted off her skin, casting an almost angelic glow, yet the shadows whispered warnings, a siren's call amidst temptation. "Come, sister," she coaxed, her voice sing-song, spinning with the wind. "Play with us." My blood ran cold, instinct told me to run. But her words wrapped around me like fog, urging me closer. I took a hesitant step in her direction, heart pounding louder than the ghostly tune that laced the air. Was it a nursery rhyme? My mind screamed to look away, to flee. But at that moment, I was entranced, lured by a strange familiarity. As I approached, the dull sound of laughter echoed in response, a chorus of laughter, only to be rivaled by something darker, moans and cries merging with delight, forming a cacophony that shattered my sanity. I quickened my pace, scarcely believing my wandering thoughts, when the girl spun around, her face twisted into a grotesque smile, mouth far too wide, revealing teeth too sharp, too white against the sun-drenched world. Her eyes glinted with a sickening delight, void of innocence. The moment froze, the air heavy with dread as she reached for me, her fingers elongated and delicate, each movement unnaturally fluid. "What's the matter?" she taunted, her voice echoing with that sing-song quality, stretching and blending into the wind. "Don't you want to play?" A ripple of panic gripped me, and suddenly the ground trembled beneath my feet. The flowers began wilting, colors fading into sickly hues, as branches splintered and cracked, twisting into monstrous shapes. With a twisted grin, she beckoned, "Join them." I turned, and horror clawed at my throat. Children, dozens of them, emerged from the shadows cloaked in the playground's grotesque embrace. Their faces were warped, disfigured, belonging to those who had danced here once but now remained trapped in eternal laughter. They surged forward, a wave of spirits caught between joy and agony, reaching for me with skeletal hands. That I stumbled back, desperate to escape, but the ground shifted as they laughed, a deep rumbling that threatened to swallow me whole. I could feel the weight of their gaze, the understanding mingling with madness. "We just want to have fun," they cried, voices melding into one another, harmonizing with a dreadful melody that resonated through me like a dark symphony. Somewhere amidst the chaos, the girl grinned wider, her sharp teeth gleaming in the recreation of innocence. My heart seized. It was as if the laughter itself was a living thing, burrowing deep into my mind, tempting me to succumb to despair. "Join us or be lost forever." A voice thundered, a cry so filled with anguish it echoed through the ground. The thundering laughter crescendoed, crashing down upon me like waves in a storm, and as I turned to run, the world began to distort. Dimensions warped, colors screamed, and reality fractured. The last thing I saw was the girl's face morphing into a mask of shadow, and the darkness closing in as I plunged downward, spiraling into the abyss. When I gasped awake this time, the laughter hung around me like a heavy fog, relentless and insidious, a broken echo that promised I was never truly alone. I was surrounded. And as I prepared to scream, a joyless giggle rippled beneath. "Now we can play forever." The atmosphere suffocated me, a dense blanket woven from despair and fear cloaking every corner of the room. My surroundings, twisted and darkened, morphed from the nightmarish playground into an ink-black void. The laughter lingered, indistinct yet omnipresent, entwining with the shadows that flitted at the edge of my vision. I still felt the icy grip on my throat, as if the girl's fingers were embedded in my flesh, corralling me back into their desolate dance. With trembling hands, I pushed against the oppressive weight of the darkness, struggling to reclaim my breath. Each inhalation tasted of ash and decay, the remnants of shattered innocence. Panic coursed through my veins, urging me to get up, to break free from whatever sinewy hold bound me. I scanned my surroundings, each whispered giggle intertwining with the echoes of lost children. A fracturing clap of sound erupted from the void, and the laughter abruptly ceased, leaving an eerie silence. My pulse raced, heart thundering in the stark hush, terror anchoring me in place. Time stretched and warped as if the universe was holding its breath, waiting for something beyond comprehension to unfold. Then, a sliver of light dared to breach the surrounding darkness. I turned, drawn towards it, hoping it held the promise of escape. Moving closer, the shimmering glow morphed into a whisper of familiar warmth, illuminating our memories. I could almost feel the presence of those I loved, their faces appearing momentarily beneath the glow, distant and distorted. But they faded as quickly as they came, leaving only a lingering ache. "Help me," I murmured, reaching out, but the brightness dimmed. Just as uncertainty clawed at my heart, the laughter returned, chipping at the very edges of my sanity. I could hear the soft calls of children pleading, but there was an underlying desperation stitched into their pleas, a warning masked by their merry cries. "Don't go into the light, sister. We belong in the dark." The words echoed around me, reverberating like a dissonant song sung in a twisted choir. I stumbled back, feeling a sudden weight at my ankles. Chills skated over my skin as spectral shapes crawled from the gloom, their translucent forms merging with the darkness. I was not just surrounded, I was cornered. "Join us," they chorused, their voices slicing through the paralysis of fear, commanding and hypnotic. "We want to play. Forever." A wave of dread crashed over me. I half turned to flee but felt a tug at my fingertips, as if spectral hands held me within their iron grip, weaving me into their web. Now more than ever, I sensed the lurking presence of the girl. I could almost hear her breathing, mingling with the crowd of lost souls that surrounded me, but I had to escape. Clenching my fists, I surged forward, fueled by a primal urge to flee. Just when I thought I had broken free, a sharp pain lanced through my feet. Looking down, horror seized me. The ground was not soil but a mass of contorted faces, each one twisted in a silent scream, mouths agape in terror. I was standing on the very fabric of their suffering. No. I screamed, recoiling in horror, but the ground shifted beneath my feet, pulling me deeper into the abyss. I felt their cold bile rising through me, an insidious force clawing at my marrow. The faces contorted, fingers extending from the earth to grasp my ankles, dragging me toward the depths below. "Play with us, sister," their voices rose in feverish unison, growing louder as if they sensed my wallowing despair. "Don't you want to join?" Desperation clawed at my throat as I fought against them, my cries swallowed whole by the darkness. I grasped for anything, yet their cries echoed with a chilling familiarity. The playground, the girl, the laughter, they were all intertwined in this hell I couldn't escape. Just then, a familiar face surfaced in the turmoil, a fleeting glimpse of a beloved figure. "Help me!" I yelled, tearing at the air, beckoning to them as if they were a beacon of hope. But the phantom's laughter crescendoed, drowning out my pleas, and with it came the haunting words, "You cannot resist the fun." With a dwindling grasp on reality, I struggled against the encroaching shadows and felt the chilling caress of the girl's fingers tracing my spine. She whispered sweetly into my ear, "Time for games, sister." Forever, the world spun, the darkness thickened, and as I felt the ground give way beneath me, I could only scream one last time before everything collapsed into nothingness. And then silence. Somewhere in that void, a new voice whispered, chilling and sweet, "Are you ready to play?" The void was not empty, it pulsed with malevolence, a sentient darkness enveloping me like a thick fog. I felt suspended, as if the very air conspired to keep me from the light, layered with a grotesque hunger. The silence was crushing, and the weight of despair thickened around my ribs. But the quiet was disturbed. Somewhere in the distance, I could faintly hear the echo of laughter, cruel, mocking sound that clawed at the edges of my mind. Gradually, that laughter morphed into whispers, entwining with the shadows that twisted into existence before my eyes. "Come play with us," they beckoned, their voices sultry and sweet, wrapping around me like a silken thread. Panic bubbled within me as I tried to push against the weight of the invisible world, desperate for breath, desperate for reality. Suddenly, a guttural growl rumbled from the depths around me, and I froze. In stark contrast to the laughter, it held a promise of violence and unexplainable malevolence threatening to erupt. The laughter faded as a sudden form began to take shape, emerging from the pulsing darkness, a grotesque parody of childhood laughter, a face framed with unnaturally long hair that seemed to writhe and slither like living shadows. "Do you remember what you did?" it hissed, its voice charged with poison and thrill. "We always remember." The memory crashed over me like icy water, the blood-streaked splendor of that cursed playground. The day that something terrible happened, the day that laughter turned to screams. My own face loomed before me, unforgiving as it stood in the recesses of my memory, encased in guilt. I took a step back, my heart hammering violently. "No. You can't be real." "Real?" it taunted, voice dripping like venom. "What is real, sister? Is it flesh? Or is it the price of innocence lost?" And suddenly, I was thrust into a whirlwind of memories, lost fragments swirling in a cacophony of terror. Flickers of joyful moments twisted into nightmares, each echo of laughter morphing into wails of despair. I felt their grief as if it coursed through my veins, awakening pain long buried, their longing for reprieve igniting my own. "Help us. Help us remember." They called, their voices harmonizing in a symphony of agony. The silhouettes of those I had wronged filled my vision, their faces tortured and pleading, still clinging to the hope that I might pull them from this darkness. I blinked furiously, forcing myself to see the truth of their anguish, the gravity of my choices weighing heavier than I could bear. "I'm so sorry," I cried, my voice cracking against the relentless hush. But instead of solace, a wave of righteous fury arose, and the shadowed girl glared at me with hollow hunger. "Sorry means nothing here," she said, voice sharp as icicles. "You made your choice, now dance with us." The air shimmered and shifted as if the very fabric of reality was being torn asunder. Shapes whirled around me, lost children reaching out, their fingers brushing against my skin, drawing me closer to their fray. Each hand felt disappointingly corporeal, an electric shock leaping into my heart. With a sudden surge of adrenaline, I dashed through them, though phantom arms lashed out, grasping at my limbs, trying to tether me to this nightmarish revival. "You can't leave. Not yet." I could feel their desperation rising, an unquenchable force clawing at my sanity. I burst through a thin veil of darkness and staggered into an open area, a vast expanse of swirling shadows above a ruined playground. The swings creaked and swayed, and in their motion, I sensed an unnatural consciousness, as if the very structure remembered the laughter that once enveloped it. A flicker of movement caught my eye, a figure in the distance, rippling with an otherworldly glow. "You don't belong here, come with me," it whispered, imploring, yet I couldn't decide if it was an ally or another tormentor, but behind that figure emerged the girl, a shadowy malice twisted across her features. "Where do you think you're going?" she shrieked, the voice echoing with anger, causing every nerve in my body to go taut. That I was caught in a web of terror, a primal fear savagely clawing at the edges of my consciousness. I could either dive into the light that beckoned me, or be consumed by the darkness that raged against my very existence. As I fumbled for a decision, the ground beneath me began to rumble, the sound of laughing voices rising to a crescendo. The world fractured as the shadows gripped my ankles once more, and with a horrifying realization, I screamed into the churning abyss, "No. I refuse to play," but the darkness replied, brazenly mocking. "Oh, sister, you never had a choice. The game has only just begun." Just then, the swings erupted into frenzied motion as dark forms surged towards me, their laughter echoing with malevolence. The last thing I saw before the ground swallowed me whole were the mocking glints in their eyes, the same looks I recognized from the children I had wronged, and in that suffocating darkness, as I felt myself being pulled apart, came the girl's final whisper, chilling my blood, "Are you ready for round 2, sister. The world dissolved into an inferno of sensations, a chaotic blend of pounding dread and icy despair as I plummeted through the eternal blackness. A kaleidoscope of memories flashed before my eyes, a relentless stream of laughter, from joyous innocence to edge-of-your-seat shrieks reverberating off the walls of my mind like jagged glass. Each memory cut deeper, illuminating the truth I had tried so desperately to forget that I landed with a jarring thud, the sound echoing into the void as if mocking my very existence. Darkness enveloped me once more, but this time it was suffocating, oily and cold, writhing like a living entity against my skin. I struggled to rise, a creeping dread settling low in my gut like a long-forgotten fear. Was I alone now? As I peeled myself from the ground, the chill of dread clung to my bones, but something more sinister lingered within the shadows, slithering closer to me. The atmosphere turned electric and alive with whispers that climbed the walls of my consciousness. The voices called, structural memories buried deep within my psyche began to bubble up, unearthing feelings I had locked away. Help us see us remember, they echoed, overlapping into a cacophony of pleading, yearning, and resentment. I squeezed my eyes shut, wishing for oblivion, but the whispers grew louder, desperate fingers of phantom children clawing at the edges of my reality. Look only forward, I muttered under my breath, forcing my feet to move, searching for a path through the inescapable shadows. As I walked, the ground shifted beneath me, each step like sinking deeper into quicksand. Visions flared and flickered, a playground engulfed in flames, plates of shattered laughter spiraling into agony, and the faces of children, forever caught between joy and horror, pleading for someone, anyone, to set them free. Suddenly, I was thrust into an empty auditorium, filled with rows upon rows of empty chairs, whispers echoing through the cavernous space. My heart pounded as I took in the grotesquely twisted bodies of puppets hung from the ceiling, each one frozen in a perpetual grimace. A stage at the front beckoned, illuminated under a solitary spotlight that flickered uncertainly, casting monstrous shadows that danced on the walls like phantoms from my darkest dreams. As if compelled by some unseen force, my feet led me toward the stage, sweat dripping down my back. Each step echoed with grave finality, haunting my own presence in a place that felt too familiar. On the stage, a solitary microphone stood, swaying slightly as if beckoning me closer. A silhouette emerged from backstage, a hulking figure adorned in darkness, its movements predatory and deliberate. I instinctively recoiled, but the figure raised an arm, pointing at me. The puppet strings dangled, and with a jolt of awakening horror, I recognized the strings. They were made of the very laughter that had clawed at my mind. You shall play the part, the figure crooned with a voice dripping honey, yet laced with shards of ice. No one escapes this stage. Will you perform with us, sister? With a choked gasp, I turned to flee, but the theater erupted into life, ghostly children appearing in every chair, their hollow eyes fixated on me. Each face screamed with muted agony, unraveling my resolve as their shadows enveloped me like a shroud. They swayed in rhythm, a haunting lullaby melding with the sound of straining strings. Help us, play for us. Their voices rose in a chorus of despair, the discordant harmony echoing in my ears like a death knell. I was ensnared, trapped beneath the weight of their palpable sorrow. A deep rumble shattered the air as the entire auditorium began to convulse, walls seeming to close in, the laughter morphing into a horrific rapture. Step into the light, sweet sister, the figure cooed. Make them remember with you at the center. I stumbled back, disoriented, but as I tripped over the edge of the stage, the world tilted violently. The children surged from their seats, tendrils of darkness reaching out, pulling me toward the abyss that writhed beneath. No more laughter, only the shrill cries of their needs burned against my skin like acid. With a final plea to escape, I grasped the edge of the stage, breathing heavily as I glimpsed up and locked eyes with the monstrous figure. Its smile split wide, revealing rows of teeth that gleamed with a sinister reflection of the very children I had tried to save. Join us, sister. We are all waiting for you. Then, without warning, the black void erupted, consuming not just the stage, but everything around me, the curtain falling over my last conscious thought, and in that suffocating darkness, realizing too late I never truly left mayhem behind, the world twisted and glitched around me, leaving nothing but the chilling question that echoed in my mind: do you still wish to play? The silence that followed was a deathly hush, a stillness so profound that I felt like the very air had thickened, saturating my lungs with a cold dread. I hung suspended in darkness, as if time itself had ceased, a heartbeat lost in an echoing void. Every phantom whisper faded, replaced by a suffocating stillness that bore down upon me like a weight I could not shake. Gradually, I became aware of a new sensation: icy fingers tracing the contours of my skin, slipping through the darkness like wraiths. Panic surged as I scrambled for purchase, gasping for breath that eluded me amidst the overwhelming cold. "Hello?" I croaked, my voice thin and lost against the vastness surrounding me. Nothing answered but the faint echo of my own whisper, mocked by the emptiness, and then, like the shiver of a spine awakening from slumber, the darkness began to swirl. Shadows morphed and folded upon themselves, revealing fleeting glimpses of twisted faces, distorted, anguished visages that grinned wider than should have been possible, eyes reflecting an abyssal hunger. I recoiled, but the encroaching shadows spread across the ground like creeping fog, inching toward me with a life of their own. That I forced my legs to move, stumbling blindly backward from memory, forward into the unknown. The air thickened with an unholy stench, rotting like forgotten corpses freshly unearthed. With every step, the whispers returned, more guttural now, a confounding mix of laughter and tears, a macabre lullaby that urged me onward. I felt the spectral children encircle me again, their soft, pleading eyes echoing the torment I couldn't bear to witness. "Remember us, save us," my heart sank further, a knot twisting cruelly in my gut as the faces morphed, revealing those familiar to me friends who had been lost, laughter silenced forever. Whether it was a dream or a cruel nightmare, I didn't know, but every visage pulled me deeper into despair, clawing at the dim recesses of my memories. "Please. I can't," I gasped, but the shadows were ravenous, devouring my pleas, cradling the voices of the past, whispering accusation through my thoughts. I stumbled forward, following a flicker of light, faint but beckoning dangerously like a distant star. As my feet carried me in its direction, the world twisted again, and the line between reality and nightmare began to erode. I fell to my knees, the ground shifting beneath me as if alive, cold, clammy fingers wrapping around my ankles to hold me captive. The oppressive darkness flickered, revealing outlines of a twisted figure in the distance. The illumination from the figure morphed into the semblance of a long-forgotten park, the swings creaking softly, the old merry-go-round festooned with spectral laughter. But the colors were off, the brightness dulled to a sickening hue that turned joy into a grotesque parody. "Come play." The figure called, its voice distorted, layered with echoes of childhood joy and terror, before garbling into something far more sinister. That I shook my head violently, terror clawing my throat. It was the last thing I wanted, to return to something so deceptively inviting, yet coated in dread. "No. You're not real." I screamed, but the swinging figure only laughed, an echo born from every moment I wished to forget. "Come, sister. You know the games we can play," it beckoned, stepping forward, revealing a figure laden with echoes of those I had lost yet felt compelled to seek. Their eyes burned bright with fervor, and tortured memories mingled with the laughter of the lost. Without hesitation, I turned to run, but the ground transformed, solidifying into a polished surface beneath my feet. I glanced back to see the figure morphing into myriad forms, faces flickering like poorly tuned television sets, gathering energy from the shadows as they edged closer. "They won't let you leave, sweet sister. Won't you join the dance?" A wave of the past crashed over me, each face gnashing their teeth in something between ecstasy and despair, the air thick with their longing. I staggered backward, hitting something solid, warm even amid the freezing chill. I turned, heart racing, to find myself face to face with a mirror, the surface rippling with a haunting glow as those trapped souls within pressed their pallid hands against the glass. "You know us," they chanted, voices scratching against my mind. "You can set us free." Suffocated by a suffusion of emotion, a mixture of hope and dread, I reached for the reflection, fingertips tingling as the surface shuddered violently. My breath caught as the mirror began to crack, a web of darkness spreading like veins through glass. I could hear the echo of forgotten laughter mixing with eroded cries as the shadows encroached, the laughter rising ominously into a crescendo. "Join us," the chorus wailed as the cracks widened, and with a heart-stopping moment of clarity, I realized every soul was reaching for me, desperate, pulling me into the chaos. They wanted my connection, my essence, my existence intertwined with theirs in a performance I never wished to be part of, and just as I was about to succumb to the frantic pull, a single child face broke through the surface, her hollow eyes wide with yearning yet juxtaposed with an unbearable void. Don't let the darkness take you, all will be lost. The glass shattered spectacularly, sending shards flying, and my sharp intake of breath mingled with the deafening cacophony of laughter that spiraled out of control into a terrifying tempest. As the world erupted into chaos, the fragments sliced through the air like jagged metal. My own scream melded with theirs, a symphony of horror rising, pushing me to the edge of my own sanity. I was left behind, fire and glass spiraling around me as I plummeted into the unfathomable depths, and amidst it all, the chilling realization settled like ice in my veins: there was no escaping my past, no denying the dark games I had unwittingly agreed to play. The next moment plunged me into darkness once again. I would have to make a choice to embrace the void or fight the shadows clawing at me with whispered promises of freedom. With nothing left but dread, it became clear that in this twisted carnival of memories, the real game was just beginning. The question loomed heavier than before, echoing into the depths of my psyche: will you play in the shadows or become one yourself? The echoes of the shattering glass faded into a cacophony of nightmarish shrieks, enveloping me in the unrelenting grip of the abyss. Pain lanced through my body like shards of ice as the darkness closed in, a tangible weight pressing me to the ground. Instinctively, I struggled against the weight that threatened to smother me, swallowing every ounce of light that remained. Frantically, my fingers clawed at the earth beneath me, its surface slick with something unspeakable grime of lost stories, of wretched souls who had once tread this cursed path. An acrid stench filled my nostrils, curling around the tendrils of my memories, reminding me of what once was, laughter that turned brittle in the face of encroaching shadows. Remember us, the haunting child's voice whispered, the resonance growing from a mere echo to an overwhelming chorus that reverberated through my mind, intertwining with the shadows surging all around me. You set us free. Straining to rise, I looked up and saw them, the pitiful outlines of the children I had lost, their eyes devoid of life yet flickering with the desperate spark of recognition. They stretched out their hands, reaching, pleading, lost in a desperate tangling of confusion and hope. Help us. Their voices harmonized, a macabre symphony of innocence tainted by despair. We don't want to dance anymore. But the shadows moved with a sinister grace, swirling in a mockery of childhood glee, twisting the haunting memories into a grotesque spectacle. An old merry-go-round slowly emerged from the depths of darkness, its surface etched with the names of those who had vanished, each letter carved deep, each name another thread binding me to this wretched reality. That I backed away, but the ground warped beneath me, fear mapping the contours of my heart. They can't take you, the child's voice returned, more insistent. Not yet. You know the way. With newfound resolve, I turned from the children's desperate visages, searching for a way out of this dark carnival. Pushing through the thick murk, I stumbled across a lonely pathway that coiled like an old, dying serpent, its edges lined with decaying memories of joy long since drowned. The whispers grew louder, overlapping in a cacophony of regret. Each step into the ever-thickening shadows sought to pull me deeper into their grasp, clinging like wet rags to my skin. Images of laughter danced before my eyes, blurring the line between past and present, a moment when innocence took flight only to crash hard and leave destruction in its wake. That I noticed a flicker at the end of the paton, almost ethereal light that beckoned me with the same tender urgency the shadows had. My heart raced, torn between the pull of that warmth and the chilling grip of the darkness, all the while knowing that whatever lay ahead would unearth the truths I had buried deep within. As I reached the source of the light, a sepulchral figure stepped into view. Clad in tattered veils that fluttered as though caressed by an unseen wind, it held a lantern that glowed with an unsettling radiance. The figure's face remained obscured, but I saw fragments of faces whirl within the glowing orb, the swirling memories of the lost, of those who had approached before me, eager to find their haven yet caught in the web of shadows. Do you seek freedom? The figure intoned, its voice resonating with the pain of all those who had ventured down this path before me. Or will you turn back to your own darkness? Freedom, I managed to whisper, but the word clung bitterly to my tongue, flavored with a longing that tasted unnatural amid the cries of the forsaken. But the lantern's light flickered in response, and the shadows recoiled momentarily, whispering threats that were swallowed by the silence as I wavered on the edge of decision, yet as the figure stepped closer, its true form began to dissolve into a myriad of faces each contorted with anguish. "You can set them free, but at what cost?" It hissed, the sharp intake of breath sending cold shivers racing down my spine. "Join me, or face the darkness that desires you all the more," panic surged. Again, stirring ancient, dormant fears buried within my heart, fears of betrayal, of choice, of the irrevocable. But just as I opened my mouth to respond, another voice, deeper, more resonant, cut through the air, echoing from behind me, "Leave her. She belongs to us." The shadows surged forward once again, faster this time, an insatiable tide that crashed over me, dragging me away from the light. I wheeled around, arms flailing as I tried to grasp something ganathingly to find nothing but the smothering void that I in that moment, the chilling realization struck. I was the embodiment of fear and hope intertwined, a pawn on this wretched chessboard, with every move from here on sealing my fate. The figures wailing, gathering, merging into a singularity, began to chant, their voices a dreadful rhythm that encased my heart in terror. I saw flickers of familiar faces among the shadows, each calling out for release, urging me to remember the light that once was, but the clock ticked loudly in that growing nightmare, a countdown that resonated in sync with each heartbeat. One final choice lay before me as the shadowy figures lunged forward, either embrace the darkness and become one with the tales of terror etched in those twisted faces, or attempt to flee to the light, knowing full well it may swallow me whole. And in that breathless moment, fear grappled with resolve as I screamed, "I will not let them take me," but before any action could betray my fury, the ground beneath me crumbled, and I began to plummet into an abyss filled with a cacophony of laughter and despair, casting me further away from the light, where the shadows awaited my embrace. As I descended into the churning void, the darkness wrapped around me like a freezing shroud, numbing my desperation. The shrieks of lost souls filled the air, a dissonant melody echoing in the yawning abyss. I fought against the weight of despair that pressed down upon me. It felt as if 1,000 hands were reaching out from the blinding dark, holding me back, reminding me of the terror lurking just beyond the edge of my consciousness. With each heartbeat, frantic visions of the past clawed through my mind. The night I had lost my children, their laughter turning to shrieks of pure horror. I could see their faces, twisted with anguish, desperately reaching for me as the shadows consumed them whole. "Please," I had whispered into that dread-laden night, "not my babies." The memory tightened its grip like a noose around my throat, choking me with guilt and sorrow. Suddenly, the falling ceased. I landed on an equally smooth yet unsettling surface, a strange cobblestone splayed with runic engravings that pulsed with an unsettling warmth. I pushed myself up, trembling as I scanned my surroundings. The shadows coiled around the perimeter, their forms amorphous and malevolent, retreating to observe as I caught my breath. Before me loomed a massive archway, tall and imposing, woven with vines of black mist. A warped, battered sign hung from the arch, the threshold of truth. My heart raced. I felt a mix of dread and resolve pulling me forward. Was this the doorway to salvation, or yet another pitfall of lies and horrors? Compelled by the whispers echoing in my mind, I took a step closer. The air grew thick, laden with an unsettling mixture of hope and despair. Each rune on the ground glowed more vividly with every step I took, illuminating creeping shapes skittering just beyond the edge of my vision. I thought I saw familiar silhouettes, me children, but every time I turned, they melted into the dark. But what truth will I uncover? My voice trembled as I spoke aloud. In response, a deafening silence enveloped me, broken only by a taunting giggle that echoed through the archway. A familiar sound, full of innocent mockery. My stomach nodded, and I stepped closer, peering into the gaping maw of the archway. With a trembling breath, I stepped through. A kaleidoscope of ghastly sights unfurled before me, a carnival flooded with grotesque, twisted versions of joyous memories. It looked like the carnival we had visited that fateful summer, but stripped bare of laughter and filled instead with despair. The merry-go-round spun lazily in the distance, the horses warped into ghastly, snarling beasts. The once bright colors of the tents faded to gray, punctuated with the stark red of dripping blood. Children, disembodied spirits echoing the laughs I used to cherish, flitted through the chaos, their faces gaunt and haunting, wearing expressions of endless torment. I threw myself against the weight of despair, forcing my body into the crowd or whatever remained of it, fighting my way through the swarming memories. "Help us," they wailed, a mournful choir chaining my feet to the earth. I cringed, their ghostly faces twisting and contorting, each vying for recognition. A shivering realization crashed over me: they were not just echoes of my children, they were remnants of each life lost to this nightmare, their souls twisted and entangled with my own. Clenching my fists, I pressed on, seeking the glimmer of hope I sensed lurking somewhere beneath this facade of horror. I could feel the pulse of the glowing runes beneath the cobblestones guiding me, beckoning me. Suddenly, a chilling scream erupted from a nearby booth, drawing my attention. I turned just in time to witness a girl, frozen in terror, her eyes wide as she was yanked backward into the shadows by a creature with claws like razors, an amalgam of past fears made manifest. I screamed, but the din drowned out my voice. "You can save them," the shadowy figure whispered from the darkness, overseeing the chaos with a predatory glee. "Join your children. Don't you want to dance in the shadows, to revel in despair?" "No," I howled defiantly as I stumbled backward. "I won't let you take me. I refuse." But behind me, the shadows loomed larger, writhing with anticipation as the cacophony of lost souls clamored for my submission, for my surrender to their unforgiving grasp. I could feel the last vestiges of my strength waning, the weight of their desperate pleas anchoring me to this horrific reality. With every ounce of will I had left, I turned again to the archway. The pulsing sigils beckoned, but they now seemed to pulse with sinister hunger. They were watching me, waiting for me to make a choice: the shadows or the truth. As the otherworldly chorus climbed to a fever pitch, I steeled my resolve and bolted toward the arch. The shadows shrieked in fury, lashes of darkness reaching out to ensnare me. I felt their breath against my back, cold and stinging like knives. I sprinted toward the threshold, the runes flaring brighter just as the shadows clutched my legs, trying to tear me back into the abyss. "Don't look back," a voice screeched in my mind as I lunged through the archway, expecting the world beyond would be filled with redemption. Instead, I was met by a darkness even more profound than before, and I realized too late that the threshold was not a passage to freedom, it was a portal to a darker fate. I fell through nothingness, enveloped in silence, until I was submerged in frigid water, gasping as the unseen hands dragged me down, whispering promises of oblivion. How could this be? I thrashed wildly, a desperate plea on my lips when, emerging from the depths, a voice sang sweetly in my ear, "Welcome home." And then the water closed over me, erasing all hope as turbulent shadows loomed just beyond my reach. I awoke yet again, a jarring jolt propelling me back into consciousness. My heart thundered in my chest, panic coursing through my veins as I struggled to take stock of my surroundings. I blinked furiously, eyes adjusting to the dim light. I was no longer in a spiraling void but within a room saturated in shadow, a small, childlike bedroom decorated with faded wallpaper, the air thick with a dusty odor of decay. The wallpaper was familiar, it was the same nursery I had painted for my little girl, adorned with whimsical characters, now twisted and peeling as though nightmares had invaded the very essence of the room. Silence reigned, yet the air hummed with an unsettling energy, the walls seemingly breathing alongside my own anxious breaths. I sat upright in a child's bed, frantically rubbing my eyes, convinced that I must tear through the haze of my own trepidation. Had I returned to reality? Memories still throbbed in my mind, the laughter echoing, the screams that resonated from every corners of despair. A futile attempt to forget, I recoiled as the horror returned, intensified by the plush, fragile remnants of innocence now marred by lingering darkness. It was surreal, those giggling faces that had haunted my dreams were now imprinted on the walls. The childlike essence radiated an energy that danced along my spine in an intoxicating blend of nostalgia and dread. And then, I heard Ida's soft giggle, innocent and playful, pricking my ears like frozen needles. The sound beckoned to me, a call to action or perhaps a summons to something sinister. "Sister, come play." The voice rang through the stillness, threading itself into the very fabric of the room, and I shivered uncontrollably. Without thinking, I bolted upright, muscles tensing as I smoothed down my disheveled hair, dread pooling in my stomach like stone. Is someone there? I managed to stammer, regretting the very moment I opened my mouth. The laughter grew louder, rising like an insatiable wave, soaking me in an echoing melody of childhood dreams morphed into grotesque nightmares. I glared at the door. Would it open? Would I dare try to escape again? But it was drawing me in. I felt an insatiable urge to follow the sound, to smell the lingering scent of innocence wrapped around treachery. I pushed the covers aside and stood, the wooden floorboards creaking beneath my feet, reminding me of the threshold I had crossed before. I glanced around the room, a shroud of fear grazing my skin, telling me to be cautious. And then I saw a porcelain doll, perched on a nearby shelf like an effigy of secrets. Its glassy eyes glinted with an unnatural sheen, fixating upon me as if gauging my every intention. Memories rushed back, the cold hands gripping my throat, the fingers that sought to drag me into the void, and the voices that rose in undulating harmony. I swallowed hard. Did I escape, or was this part of the game? The air shivered around me, and suddenly, the door swung open, creaking heavily, revealing something horrid beyond. A dimly lit hallway stretched ahead, shadows creeping along the walls in a dance of malevolence. Moments felt like hours as I steeled myself. Do I confront the horror or seek reassurance in the light behind me? My instincts screamed for me to flee, to arm myself against the darkness. But my heart, entwined with curiosity, pulled me in. With each hesitant step, that laughter twined around me, wrapping tighter until I felt its echoes vibrate within my bones. Come, sister. We've been waiting. I staggered into the hallway, its depth and endless expectation brimming with malice. But I pressed forward, compelled by the desire to confront whatever lay waiting. Shadows warped before me, and I could feel eyes, ours, theirs, all of them watching from every angle, peering curiously at my impending fate. The giggles merged into a dissonant symphony, resonating deafeningly, until the walls dimmed entirely, plunging me into an eternal void. Images folded into each other, swirling in chaotic disorder. Me daughters, twisted and laughing, playing games in this hellish spectrum where I was. Both the victim and the perpetrator of their suffering. Remember us, they sang, voices sweet and mocking, echoing through the stillness of my fractured mind. With a shuddering breath, I stepped into the murky beyond where the laughter transformed into shrieks, wrapping around me like a noose of dark memories. Before I could comprehend, I was yanked forward into a vast space, the playground, that terrible place where laughter turned to cries, a constant station between what once was and what would come to be. The rusted structures now seemed alive, twisted into skeletal forms stretching towards the sky in a taunting welcome. With newfound terror, I realized that I wasn't here alone. Shadowy forms danced about the playground, giggling, whispering, arms extending toward me, a swarm of lost souls, forever entrapped in their abominable glee. And at the center, a little girl, her face horrifyingly familiar, the same child from my memories, the one who had been lost. Now you can play with us forever, she grinned, her voice laced with the remnants of innocence gone terribly wrong. I wanted to scream, I wanted to run. But as I turned, trying to flee back through the archway, I felt the ground shift beneath me, the play area warping like a reflection in disturbed water, closing in. Shadowy hands reached for my feet, tugging, pulling, drawing me further into their circle. Your game never ends, sister. You are one of us now. And it was true. I had always been one of them, woven into the very fabric of this darkness, each giggle, each whisper, luring me closer, deeper into this perpetual state of horror. Fear suffocated me, there was no escape, only a glorious, nightmarish dance amidst the echoes of lost souls forever hungry for someone to play with. In that final moment of clarity, realization crashed over me. I had traded my sanity for shadows, my laughter for their cries. I twisted to confront my own reflection, twisted into the darkness, and gazed into the endless depths of the child's eyes staring right back at me. Are you ready to join in the fun? They taunted, their voices a song of despair that echoed in my mind, drowning out all remaining thoughts of escape, for now, my fate was sealed. And as the world blurred around me, I felt the echoes of their laughter wrapping around my soul, the haunting refrain of eternal play, never able to leave, never allowed to forget, come and play forever.